I think the ACLU is suffering from normophobia, and that means opposing anything that's good and decent and normal and trying to promote what is abnormal.
Consider for a few moments the ACLU's efforts to protect a declared pedophile organization. Please note that the following contains some graphic scenes. Parental discretion is advised. 10-year-old Jeffrey Curley of Cambridge, Massachusetts was a bright little boy who enjoyed ice skating, baseball, and a good laugh. Barbara Curley is Jeffrey's mom.
Jeffrey was very lovable. Everybody loved Jeff. He was a joker, always joking around with people. His favorite thing in the whole world to do was ice skate.
But on October 1st, 1997, Jeff went for a ride with a neighbor, Salvatore Sicari, and his friend Charles James, seen here. The two men promised to buy him a new bike to replace his bike, which had been stolen a few weeks before. He never returned.
Well, what these guys did, they stole his bicycle, and they promised Jeffrey a bicycle, and they played that out for a few weeks with them.
Bob Curley is Jeffrey's father. He points out where Jeffrey was last seen alive.
Jeff was right here in the yard watching the dog. And James Sicari said, "Come by in the car." And he said, "Come on, Jeff, we're going to go get your bicycle." And he jumped in the key, ran in the house, said it was Grandma. He said, "Nan, I'll be back in 10 minutes. I'm going to go get something." And that was it. He jumped in the car with him, and they took off.
After abducting him, it became clear what they were really after: his body for sexual purposes.
They offered him $50 to have sex with him, and he refused. And he fought them, and they killed him.
It was probably one of the most brutal deaths that anybody could ever encounter.
The Curley's attorney, Larry Frazzoli, tells what Charles James, the main perpetrator in this case, did.
When he got in the back seat of the car, when Salvatore Sicari was driving it, he attempted to attack Jeffrey Curley.
They stuffed a wet gasoline mag in Jeffrey's mouth.
When Jeffrey resisted, he sat on him, James being well over 200 pounds, and put the gasoline-soaked rag on Jeffrey's mouth. The fumes burnt the interior of his lungs, and that's how he died.
And Jeffrey fought them for over 15 to 20 minutes, slowly suffocating. They took him to James's apartment, and he had sex with my son's dead body.
They then put the corpse in a Rubbermaid green plastic container, put lime on it, taped it up, taped the container up, and then drove to a place in Maine where they threw it off a river.
NAMBLA is the North American Man-Boy Love Association.
NAMBLA advocates that it is their right, if they can convince a 6-year-old or 7-year-old child to do a sexual act with them, when the children knows nothing about sex, in exchange for candy bar, then that is consensual sex and it's okay. And that's what they advocate and preach to their membership. They don't want their kids, they want your kids. And the age of preference for NAMBLA is 6 to 12.
The more details the Curleys learned about NAMBLA, the more they realized they had to do something to prevent this type of tragedy from happening to other little boys in the future.
NAMBLA's a group of perverts that tries to legitimize raping and sodomizing little boys, and they try to hide behind the First Amendment.
Good evening. Freedom of speech, expression, constitutional guarantees that have long protected the views and ideas of even the most controversial groups. But many are now asking, where do you draw the line? Where does free speech end and responsibility begin?
Robert and Barbara Curley are fighting to answer that question. The Massachusetts couple is suing the North American Man-Boy Love Association, an organization that openly defends what it calls intergenerational sex. Critics call them pedophiles. The Curleys say that NAMBLA shares responsibility for their son's murder. Their lawsuit seeks millions of dollars in damages, the hope being that a massive verdict would effectively drive NAMBLA out of business. The Curleys and their supporters say that this tactic is a legitimate way of holding groups morally and financially accountable. Opponents call it an end run around the Constitution. Here's Kathy Slobogan.
Jeffrey Curley was just 10 years old when he was killed. Not by strangers, but by men he thought were his friends. 2 men who wanted sex from him for the promise of a new bike.
He thought they were his friends, and they were targeting him for sex. That was the reason for the whole seduction. That was the reason for the lure of the bicycle. And I think the evidence points to the fact that when Jeffrey Curley found out what these men were after, he said no, and he struggled, and that's why they killed him.
And who is defending NAMBLA? The ACLU.
This would obviously be titillating to a pedophile. A pedophile might feel encouraged by them, but it is not the same thing as saying to somebody, go out and attack that boy. There is room in this country for people who believe that man-boy love is okay. There is room for people who believe it, who say it, but not who do it. We shouldn't confuse stuff that we read that gets us scared, that gets us enraged, that makes us disgusted. We shouldn't confuse that with illegal speech.
The Thomas More Law Center was an answer to me and my family's prayers. They've helped us financially, spiritually, and wholeheartedly.
Upon hearing about Jeff's death, one kind-hearted stranger made this collage dedicated to the memory of Jeffrey Curley.
It hangs in my home every day, and I look at it, and I remember what a wonderful little boy he was. He was so loving. He trusted everybody. And that trust got him killed. And I have to take these people out because I don't want any other family to go through what we went through. Because I hear his voice, I remember his laughter, I remember him calling me. Just to hold him again, it would be so beautiful. He's gone. And we really need to take this organization down. All of us. And we need people's help to do that.